Imagine working your way up from the bottom of a company, doing every dirty job, taking every insult, proving yourself day after day only to get fired so your boss can hire his unqualified girlfriend. Now imagine that same boss's face when he discovers the expendable employee he just threw away is actually the CEO's son, and the company he thought he understood is about to change forever. That's exactly what happened to Jasper Edwards at Phoenix Digital Solutions. For 2 years, he scrubbed floors, handled customer complaints, and worked double shifts while his manager Leo Baker treated him like disposable help. But when Leo decided to clear Jasper's position for his girlfriend Sophie Russo, he made the biggest mistake of his career, because what Leo didn't know was that the quiet, hardworking employee he'd been pushing around was secretly the heir too. The entire company and Jasper had been documenting everything. This is the story of what happens when karma comes with a corner office. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special. For you, my name is Jasper Edwards, and for the past 2 years, I've been living a double life that would make most people question my sanity. By day, I'm the guy who cleans the coffee machines, handles angry customer calls, and gets yelled at for things that aren't even my fault at Phoenix Digital Solutions, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in Seattle. By night, I go home to a modest apartment in the Belltown district, where I review company reports and strategy documents that most employees will never see. You see, there's something my manager Leo Baker doesn't know about me. Something that would probably give him a heart attack if he found out. My father, William Edwards, is the founder and CEO of Phoenix Digital Solutions. And everything Leo has put me through over the past 24 months has been carefully documented in a folder that sits locked in my desk drawer. But let me back up and explain how I ended up in this situation. When I graduated from Stanford, with my MBA, my father made me an offer that initially sounded insane. "Son," he said, leaning back in his leather chair on the 40th floor of the Emerald Tower, "our company headquarters, you can start as a junior executive and never truly understand this business. Or you can start at the bottom and learn what really makes Phoenix tick." The choice was mine: corner office with a 6-figure salary or mailroom duties at minimum wage. Most people would have grabbed the executive position without a second thought. But I'd watched too many CEOs' kids flame out because they never understood the real mechanics of their companies. I wanted to earn my place, not inherit it, so I became Jasper Edwards, recent college graduate with a fabricated resume, and walked into Phoenix Digital Solutions customer service department 2 years ago. My father and I agreed that nobody would know my true identity until I was ready to transition into a leadership role. The plan was simple: spend 2 years learning every aspect of the business from the ground up, then gradually reveal my background as it moved into management. What we didn't anticipate was Leo Baker. Leo is Phoenix's customer relations manager. A guy in his early 30s who treats our department like his personal kingdom. He's got slicked back hair that he constantly adjusts, wears suits that are just expensive enough to suggest he makes decent money, and has this way of talking down to people that makes your skin crawl. From day one, Leo seemed to have it out. For me, Edwards, he'd bark across the office floor: "Those customer satisfaction reports better be on my desk in 10 minutes, or you're staying late to redo them." It didn't matter that I'd already submitted the reports an hour early, or that they were formatted exactly according to company standards. Leo always found something wrong: a decimal point in the wrong place, font that was supposedly too small, margins that were allegedly off by a millimeter. My coworkers, decent people like Ruby Wright from accounting and Ellis Rossi from IT, would watch these interactions with the kind of uncomfortable expressions you see when someone's being publicly humiliated. They'd offer sympathetic looks and occasionally help me with tasks that Leo had deliberately made more difficult than necessary. "I don't know why he has it out for you," Ruby confided one afternoon as we grabbed coffee from the break room. "You're literally the most reliable person in that department." But I knew why Leo targeted me. I was young, educated, and I didn't kiss his ring the way he expected subordinates to do. When he made unreasonable demands, I'd comply professionally, but without the groveling attitude he craved. When he tried to take credit for my work, I'd politely ensure the actual facts were documented in emails. I wasn't disrespectful, but I wasn't afraid of him either. This dynamic created a toxic workplace situation that got progressively worse over time. Leo would assign me the worst customer calls, the screaming clients, the impossible technical issues, the complaints that This dynamic created a toxic workplace situation that got progressively worse. So, tap, the rest lal, the war. Word, a suffer, sulfur. It was bowled when it was. Required hours of research to resolve. He'd schedule me for weekend shifts and holiday coverage. He'd exclude me from team meetings and then criticize me for not being informed about decisions made in my absence. The breaking point started building about 6 months ago when Leo began dating Sophie Russo. Sophie works in our marketing department. And while she's undeniably attractive with her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer wardrobe, her professional qualifications are questionable at best. She's been with Phoenix for about 8 months, hired through a connection rather than traditional recruiting, and her primary skills seem to involve social media posting and looking good in company. Promotional photos Leo became obsessed with, impressing Sophie. He'd take extended lunch breaks to meet her at trendy restaurants downtown. He'd disappear for hours at a time, supposedly handling important client meetings that somehow always coincided with Sophie's schedule. Meanwhile, our department's workload got dumped on the rest of us. With me bearing the brunt of Leo's absent management, the situation reached new levels of absurdity when Leo started bringing Sophie around our department, showing off his authority like a peacock displaying its feathers. He'd interrupt my work to introduce her to one of our hardworking customer service representatives, always emphasizing the word representatives in a way that made it sound like I was several levels beneath them in the corporate hierarchy. Sophie would smile politely and make small talk about how challenging customer service must be, clearly having no idea what our department actually did. During one particularly memorable visit, she suggested that we should just tell unhappy customers to think positive thoughts when dealing with technical issues. Ruby and I exchanged a look that could have powered the building's emergency lighting, but Leo ate up Sophie's attention like a starving man at a buffet. He'd laugh too loudly at her jokes, agree enthusiastically with her nonsensical suggestions, and find excuses to touch her arm or back whenever she was in our workspace. It was the kind of workplace behavior that would have triggered HR complaints at any properly managed company, but Leo had cultivated relationships with the right people to avoid scrutiny. As their relationship intensified, Leo's treatment of me got worse. He seemed to view my competence as a threat to his image in front of Sophie. When I'd efficiently resolve customer issues that had been escalated to management level, Leo would downplay my contributions. When clients specifically requested to work with me on follow-up issues, Leo would reassign those accounts to other team members. The most frustrating part was watching Leo take credit for improvements I'd implemented in our customer service protocols. I'd spent months developing a new tracking system that reduced response times by 30% and increased customer satisfaction scores across the board. Leo presented this system to upper management as his own innovation, never mentioning my role in its development. Through all of this, I maintained my cover, showed up every day, did excellent work, and bit my tongue when Leo's behavior crossed lines that would have gotten him fired if anyone in senior leadership knew what was happening. I told myself this was all part of the learning experience my father had designed. I was seeing firsthand how poor management could create toxic work environments, even in successful companies. But there were limits to my patience, and as I sat at my desk on what would turn out to be my last normal day at Phoenix, Digital Solutions, I had no idea that Leo Baker was about to cross a line that would change everything. The folder in my locked drawer was getting thicker by the week, filled with documented incidents of workplace harassment, favoritism, and management failures that painted a picture of systematic dysfunction in our department. I thought I was prepared for anything Leo might throw at me. I was wrong. The beginning of the end started on a Tuesday morning in November. I arrived at the office early, as usual, to find Leo already at his desk with a coffee cup and what looked like a serious expression. This was unusual because Leo typically rolled in around 9:30, a full hour after the rest of us had started handling the morning rush of customer inquiries. "Edwards," he called out before I'd even reached my cubicle. "Conference room. Now. Now." The conference room was one of those sterile corporate spaces with a long table, uncomfortable chairs, and motivational posters about synergy and thinking outside the box. Leo was sitting at the head of the table like he was conducting a board meeting, even though it was just the two of us. "Sit down," he said, not looking up from a folder he was pretending to read. "We need to talk about your performance." This was rich, coming from someone who'd been basically collecting a paycheck, while delegating all his actual work to subordinates. But I maintained my professional demeanor and sat down, pulling out a notebook to take notes on whatever fictional performance issues Leo was about to invent. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "I've been reviewing your work over the past several months," Leo continued, finally making eye contact. "And frankly, I'm not impressed. Your customer satisfaction scores are inconsistent, your response times need improvement, and several clients have complained about your attitude." Every word out of his mouth was a complete fabrication. The customer satisfaction scores were consistently the highest in the department. My response times were faster than anyone else's, including team members who'd been with the company for years, and I'd never received a single customer complaint. In fact, multiple clients had specifically praised my professionalism in emails that were copied to management, but this wasn't about facts. This was about Leo asserting dominance and creating a paper trail for something, though I wasn't sure what yet. "I think you need to understand," Leo said, leaning back in his chair with the smug expression of someone who thought they held all the cards, "that customer service is about more than just solving problems. It's about representing the company brand, about making people feel valued and heard. And honestly, Jasper, I don't think you have the right personality for this role." The irony was suffocating. Leo Baker, who'd spent the last 6 months treating customers like annoyances and employees like servants, was lecturing me about representing the company brand. I wanted to pull out my phone and show him the 23 5-star reviews I'd received on our customer feedback platform just that month. Instead, I simply asked, "What specific improvements would you like to see?" Leo's eyes lit up like he'd been waiting for this question. "Well, that's the thing. I've been thinking about restructuring our team to better serve our clients. We need people who are more aligned with Phoenix's vision for customer relations." That's when the door opened and Sophie Russo walked in, carrying a tablet and wearing the kind of confident smile that suggested she knew exactly why she was there. "Sophie's going to be joining our customer service team," Leo announced, gesturing for her to sit down. "She brings a fresh perspective and marketing background that I think will really enhance our customer interactions." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't a performance review. This was a setup. Leo was clearing a position for his girlfriend, and I was the expendable employee who was about to get thrown under the bus. Sophie sat down and immediately launched into what was obviously a rehearsed speech about her passion for customer relations and her innovative ideas for improving client experiences. She talked about leveraging social media integration, creating personalized customer journey maps, and implementing influencer-style engagement strategies that would totally revolutionize how Phoenix connects with its user base. It was corporate buzzword bingo, delivered with the kind of enthusiasm that suggested Sophie genuinely believed she was saying something profound. The reality was that she had zero experience in customer service, no technical knowledge about our products, and apparently no understanding that our clients were primarily B2B software companies, not lifestyle influencers looking for Instagram-worthy content. But Leo nodded along like she was revealing the secrets of the universe. "This is exactly the kind of forward-thinking approach we need," he said, shooting me a look that clearly communicated that my traditional methods of actually solving customer problems were hopelessly outdated. The meeting dragged on for another 30 minutes, during which Sophie outlined her vision for transforming our department into something that sounded more like a social media agency than a technical support team. She wanted to replace our current ticketing system with engagement pods, where customers would interact through multimedia experiences. She proposed eliminating phone support in favor of video chat sessions that could be monetized through brand partnerships. Every suggestion demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of what we actually did. But Leo treated each idea like it was genius-level innovation. I sat there, taking notes, documenting this conversation for the folder that was rapidly becoming a comprehensive case study in management incompetence. Finally, Leo got to the point. "So here's what we're going to do," he said, straightening his tie like he was about to announce a major corporate acquisition. "Sophie's going to take over the senior customer relations position, effective immediately. And Jasper, we're going to have to let you go." The words hung in the air like smoke from a building fire. Let me go, after 2 years of exemplary performance, documented customer praise, and single-handedly improving departmental efficiency metrics. I was being fired so Leo could give my job to his unqualified girlfriend. "I see," I said calmly, though inside I was calculating exactly how much this conversation was going to cost Leo Baker when my father learned about it. "Can you provide specific documentation of the performance issues that led to this decision?" Leo's face flushed slightly. He clearly hadn't expected me to ask for documentation. "It's not just about specific incidents," he said, fumbling for words. "It's about fit. Sophie brings skills that are more aligned with where we're heading as a company." Sophie nodded enthusiastically. "I'm really excited to bring some creative energy to customer relations," she said. "I think clients will love the more personalized, lifestyle-focused approach I'm planning to implement." I almost felt bad for the customers who were about to experience Sophie's lifestyle-focused approach to technical support issues. Almost. The rest of the meeting was a blur of HR procedures and transition planning. Leo explained that my last day would be Friday, giving me exactly 3 days to train Sophie on systems she would never understand and processes she had no interest in learning. He handed me a separation agreement that included a non-disclosure clause and a non-compete provision that would supposedly prevent me from working for competitors for 6 months. I signed everything without argument, maintaining the professional demeanor that had served me well throughout this bizarre experience. Leo seemed almost disappointed that I wasn't fighting back or making a scene. Sophie kept glancing between us like she was expecting some kind of dramatic confrontation. As we wrapped up the meeting, Leo couldn't resist one final power play. "I want you to know this isn't personal, Jasper," he said with fake sincerity. "You're a good kid. You just need to find the right fit. Maybe something in a smaller company where the expectations aren't as high." The condescension was breathtaking. Leo Baker, who couldn't manage a department of 12 people without creating dysfunction and favoritism, was suggesting that I wasn't qualified for the high standards of Phoenix Digital Solutions, the company my father had built from nothing into an industry leader. I walked back to my cubicle in a daze, past coworkers who had no idea what had just happened. Ruby looked up from her computer as I passed her desk, probably wondering why I looked like I'd been hit by a truck. Les waved from across the room, oblivious to the fact that he'd just lost the most competent person in customer service, sitting at my desk. I opened the locked drawer and pulled out the folder that had been growing thicker by the month. 2 years' worth of documented incidents, emails, performance metrics, and examples of Leo's mismanagement. Evidence of favoritism, workplace harassment, and decisions that had cost the company both money and employee morale. I'd originally compiled this information as part of my learning experience, documenting management failures that I could help address when I eventually revealed my identity and moved into leadership. But now it had become something else entirely. It had become a case file that would determine Leo Baker's future at Phoenix Digital Solutions. The next 3 days passed in a surreal blur. I trained Sophie on customer service protocols she would never follow, introduced her to clients she would inevitably alienate, and watched Leo prance around the office like he'd just solved world hunger by firing the most productive member of his team. Sophie's training sessions were educational in the worst possible way. She couldn't grasp basic concepts like ticket prioritization, consistently confused technical terminology, and kept suggesting that we should resolve customer complaints by sending them inspirational quotes and lifestyle tips. When I tried to explain our database system, she asked if we could just use Instagram direct messages instead because that's where real conversations happen. Meanwhile, Leo was already taking credit for the department's exciting new direction. He sent emails to upper management describing the innovative changes he was implementing in customer relations, painting Sophie's hiring as a strategic move that would elevate Phoenix's client experience to new levels. On Friday afternoon, my official last day, Leo organized a brief goodbye gathering in the break room. It was awkward and forced, with coworkers who genuinely liked me standing around, eating grocery store cake while Leo made a speech about new chapters and exciting opportunities. Sophie stood beside him like they were cutting a ribbon at a grand opening, completely oblivious to the fact that she was about to inherit the most challenging role in the company. As I cleaned out my desk, I found myself thinking about my father's original challenge. He'd wanted me to understand Phoenix Digital Solutions from the ground up, to see how the company really operated beyond the sanitized reports that reached executive leadership. Mission accomplished. I'd learned that even successful companies could harbor pockets of dysfunction when the wrong people were given authority over others. I'd also learned something about myself. 2 years ago, I might have revealed my identity the moment Leo started his harassment campaign. I might have run to Daddy and had Leo fired within a week. But going through this experience had taught me patience, strategic thinking, and the value of building a comprehensive case before taking action. As I walked out of Phoenix Digital Solutions for the last time, as Jasper Edwards, customer service representative, I knew exactly what I was going to do next. It was time for Leo Baker to learn who he'd really been messing with for the past 2 years. The folder in my briefcase contained enough evidence to end Leo's career at Phoenix and potentially in the entire industry. I wasn't interested in simple revenge. I was interested in justice and in making sure that no other hardworking employee would have to endure what I'd experienced under Leo's management. It was time to have a conversation with my father. That Friday evening, I sat in my apartment staring at the separation agreement Leo had made me sign, a document that was about to become the most expensive piece of paper in his career. The non-disclosure clause alone was worth a good laugh, Leo Baker demanding that quiet about Phoenix Digital Solutions when I was literally the heir to the company. But this wasn't just about Leo anymore. Over the past 3 days, watching Sophie fumble through basic customer service tasks while Leo praised her innovative approach, I'd realized something important. This situation wasn't just an isolated case of bad management. It was a symptom of a larger problem at Phoenix, and fixing it was going to require more than just getting revenge on one incompetent manager. I'd spent 2 years documenting issues throughout the company, not just in Leo's department. I'd seen how middle management and various divisions operated when they thought no senior leadership was watching. I'd witnessed favoritism, corner-cutting, and decision-making that prioritized short-term convenience over long-term success. Leo was just the most egregious example of a systemic problem. The question was, how did I want to handle this? Option 1 was simple and satisfying. I could call my father tonight, explain what had happened, and Leo would be fired by Monday morning. Sophie would probably follow him out the door, and I could waltz back into Phoenix as the revealed heir, ready to take my rightful place in the executive suite. Clean, quick, and personally gratifying. Option 2 was more complex, but potentially more valuable. I could use this situation as a catalyst for broader changes at Phoenix. Instead of just eliminating Leo, I could expose the management issues that had allowed someone like him to thrive in the company for years. I could turn my firing into a case study that would help my father understand where Phoenix's corporate culture needed improvement. But there was also option 3, and the more I thought about it, the more appealing it became. What if I didn't reveal my identity at all? What if I let Leo think he'd won, at least temporarily? What if I used my firing as an opportunity to observe Phoenix from the outside, to see how the company handled former employees and whether Leo's version of events would be challenged by anyone in leadership? This option was risky and required more patience than I was naturally inclined toward, but it would give me invaluable data about Phoenix's systems and culture. It would also allow me to see just how far Leo would go when he thought he was safe from consequences. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to my father. then stopped. William Edwards was expecting a call from me this weekend anyway. We had a standing Saturday morning conversation where I updated him on my progress at Phoenix. He didn't know about the firing yet, and how I chose to tell him would set the tone for everything that followed. Instead of the email, I picked up my phone and called Ruby Wright. She'd been one of the few bright spots during my time in customer service, a genuinely good person who treated everyone with respect, regardless of their position in the corporate hierarchy. If anyone would give me an honest assessment of the situation, it would be Ruby. "Jasper," she answered after 2 rings. "How are you holding up? Still can't believe what happened yesterday." "I'm doing okay," I said. "Actually, I was wondering if you'd like to grab coffee tomorrow morning. I wanted to thank you for being such a great colleague, and honestly, I could use a friendly face right now." We arranged to meet at Grind Coffee, a small place in Capitol Hill that was far enough from Phoenix's downtown offices that we wouldn't run into any coworkers. After hanging up, I spent the evening organizing my documentation into a comprehensive report that told the story of my 2 years at Phoenix from a ground level perspective. The document was damning, not just for Leo, but for several other managers who had created toxic work environments in their departments. I'd witnessed sexual harassment that went unreported, financial irregularities that were ignored, and personnel decisions that violated both company policy and basic fairness. My firing was just the latest incident in a pattern of dysfunction that extended far beyond customer service. Saturday morning, Ruby arrived at the coffee shop looking tired and frustrated. She ordered a large espresso and immediately launched into a rant about the chaos that had already begun in our former department. "Sophie's first day was a disaster," Ruby said, shaking her head. "She spent 3 hours trying to set up her engagement workspace with plants and crystals and mood lighting. Then she told our biggest client that their server issues were probably caused by negative energy and suggested they try meditation to fix their database problems." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Please tell me you're joking." I wish I was. Ellis had to jump in and actually solve the technical issue, while Sophie explained to the client that she was bringing a more holistic approach to customer relations. Leo was in meetings all day, so we missed the whole thing. But Ruby, that client, called our director to complain about the unprofessional and bizarre service they received. This was even worse than I'd expected. Sophie wasn't just unqualified. She was actively damaging Phoenix's reputation with clients. And Leo was too busy basking in his perceived victory to notice that his department was imploding. "There's more," Ruby continued. "Sophie sent an email to all our major clients yesterday afternoon, introducing herself as the customer experience visionary and promising to revolutionize their journey through strategic lifestyle integration. Half of them replied asking what that even means. The other half requested to be transferred to different representatives." I pulled out my phone and started taking notes. This was all going in the report. "The thing is," Ruby said, lowering her voice, "I think Leo knows it's going badly. He's been making excuses all week about Sophie needing adjustment time, how clients don't understand innovation. But you could see it in his face yesterday. When Director Martinez asked him about the complaint calls, he looked terrified." Director Martinez. That was interesting. Alina Martinez was Phoenix's director of operations, a sharp woman who reported directly to my father. If client complaints were already reaching her level, the situation was escalating faster than Leo had anticipated. "What about upper management?" I asked. "Are they aware of what's happening?" Ruby hesitated. "That's the weird part. Leo sent this glowing report to the executive team about the successful transition in customer service. He's claiming that your replacement is exceeding expectations and bringing innovative solutions to client relations. But anyone who's actually watched Sophie work knows that's complete fiction." So Leo was doubling down, creating fictional success stories to cover up the disaster he'd created. This was perfect. The bigger the lies he told now, the harder his fall would be when the truth came out. "Ruby," I said carefully, hypothetically speaking, "if someone wanted to document what's really happening in that department, what would be the best way to do that?" She looked at me with a mixture of understanding and concern. "Jasper, I know you're angry about how this all went down. You have every right to be. But if you're thinking about some kind of whistleblower situation, you need to be careful. Leo has connections in HR, and he's not above playing dirty to protect himself. I'm not talking about going to HR, I said. I'm talking about going higher than that. Going higher than that. Ruby studied my face for a long moment. There's something about you that never quite added up, she said finally. You were too calm about everything, too strategic. Most people in your position would have either quit or exploded at Leo months ago. But you just documented everything and stayed professional. It was like you were playing a longer game. She was more perceptive than I'd given her credit for. Let's just say I have options that most people in my situation wouldn't have. Good, Ruby said firmly. Because what happened to you was wrong. Leo can't be allowed to keep destroying people's careers to benefit his girlfriend. But whatever you're planning, be smart about it. Leo might be incompetent, but he's also vindictive. If he figures out you're coming for him, he'll try to discredit you before you can act. We spent another hour talking with Ruby, filling in details about the department's dysfunction that I'd missed during my final week. By the time we parted ways, I had a clear picture of just how badly Leo had miscalculated. He'd thought firing me would eliminate a problem and create an opportunity for Sophie. Instead, he'd removed the only person keeping his department functional, while installing someone who was actively damaging the company's reputation. That afternoon, I sat down with my laptop and refined my report into a comprehensive analysis of management failures at Phoenix Digital Solutions. The document was professional, thoroughly documented, and devastating in its implications. It painted a picture of systemic problems that went far beyond one bad manager, with specific recommendations for addressing cultural and procedural issues throughout the company. But the centerpiece of the report was Leo Baker's tenure as customer relations manager, culminating in his decision to fire Phoenix's most productive customer service representative in order to hire his unqualified girlfriend. The section included client feedback, performance metrics, documented incidents of harassment and favoritism, and a detailed timeline of events leading up to my termination. The report was bulletproof. Every claim was supported by evidence. Every incident was corroborated by documentation. Every recommendation was backed by industry best practices and concrete examples of policy failures. As I finished the final draft, I realized that my decision had been made. I wasn't going to settle for simple revenge against Leo Baker. I was going to use this situation to help my father build a better company, one that would be stronger and more ethical in the long run. But first, Leo was going to learn exactly who he'd been messing with for the past 2 years. I picked up my phone and dialed my father's direct line. It was time for our Saturday morning conversation, and this week's update was going to be unlike any other. "Son," my father answered warmly. "How's my favorite customer service representative doing?" "Well, Dad," I said, "funny you should ask. It turns out your favorite customer service representative got fired yesterday. I think it's time we had a conversation about what I've learned during my 2 years at Phoenix Digital Solutions." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for exactly 10 seconds. Then William Edwards, CEO of Phoenix Digital Solutions, said in a voice that could have frozen lava, "Tell me everything." The conversation with my father lasted 3 hours. I walked him through every detail of my 2 years at Phoenix. From Leo's initial harassment to Sophie's disastrous first week, William Edwards, the man who had built a tech empire from nothing, listened without interruption as his son described how incompetent middle management was slowly poisoning his company's culture. The client complaints started within 48 hours. I explained, sharing Ruby's intelligence about Sophie's catastrophic performance. Director Martinez is already asking questions. But Leo's feeding upper management, fabricated reports about successful transitions and innovative customer service strategies. My father's response was measured but deadly. "Monday morning, you're coming in as my special consultant on operational efficiency. Your first assignment will be conducting a comprehensive review of our customer relations department." The beauty of the plan was its simplicity. I wouldn't dramatically reveal my identity to Leo immediately. Instead, I'd return to Phoenix as Jasper Edwards, William Edwards consultant, giving me the authority to investigate everything while watching Leo's reaction to my sudden reappearance in a position of power. Over the weekend, my father and I crafted a strategy that would expose not just Leo's failures, but the systemic issues that had allowed someone like him to thrive unchecked. We scheduled meetings with key department heads, arranged for client feedback sessions, and prepared a thorough audit of customer service metrics going back 2 years. Monday morning. I walked into the Emerald Tower wearing a tailored suit instead of my usual casual clothes. The security guard who had seen me every day for 2 years barely recognized me. Ruby nearly dropped her coffee when she spotted me stepping off the executive elevator. "Jasper," she whispered as I approached her desk. "What are you doing here? And why do you look like ... like I belong in the C-suite?" I smiled. "Let's just say I'm here in a new capacity. Could you please tell Manager Baker that William Edwards, consultant, is here to discuss operational efficiency with him?" The color drained from Ruby's face as the implications hit her. She'd been smart enough to sense there was more to my story, but I could see her mind racing to connect the dots. "You're not just any consultant, are you?" I said quietly. "And Leo Baker is about to learn exactly who we fired last Friday." As Ruby picked up her phone to call Leo's office, I caught my reflection in the nearby window. The young man who had quietly endured 2 years of harassment was gone, replaced by someone who understood both the ground-level operations and executive strategy of Phoenix Digital Solutions. Leo had unknowingly created his own worst nightmare, an informed, connected, and motivated adversary with the power to expose everything. Leo Baker strutted out of his office wearing his usual smug expression, clearly expecting to meet some mid-level consultant he could impress with his management expertise. His confident stride faltered the moment he spotted me standing near Ruby's desk in my executive attire. "What the hell are you doing here, Edwards?" Leo's voice cracked slightly as his brain struggled to process the impossible sight of his former subordinate looking like he belonged in the C-suite. "Good morning, Leo," I said with professional calm. "I'm here as a special consultant retained by CEO William Edwards to conduct an operational efficiency review of Phoenix Digital Solutions. I believe we have a meeting scheduled." Leo's face cycled through confusion, denial, and dawning horror in the span of 3 seconds. "This is some kind of joke, right? You can't just walk back in here pretending to be Mr. Baker," interrupted, pulling out my official consultant credentials. "And Phoenix Executive Access Badge. I suggest we continue this conversation in your office, unless you'd prefer to discuss your department's performance issues in front of your entire team." Sophie appeared behind Leo, drawn by the commotion. Her perfectly styled hair and designer outfit couldn't hide the confusion in her eyes as she tried to understand why the loser they'd fired was suddenly commanding Leo's obvious terror. "Leo, what's going on?" Sophie asked, her voice carrying the first hint of uncertainty I'd ever heard from her. "Sophie Russo, I presume," I said, extending my hand with corporate politeness. "I'm Jasper Edwards, operational consultant. I'll be reviewing your integration into the customer relations team as part of my comprehensive assessment." The handshake was firm and professional, but I could feel Sophie's confusion radiating through her palm. She looked between Leo and me, clearly sensing that something was very wrong, but unable to grasp what inside Leo's office. The dynamic had completely reversed. Leo sat behind his desk like a defendant facing judgment, while I occupied the power position, standing with my tablet, and prepared questions. Sophie perched nervously in the corner chair, finally quiet for once in her life. "Let's start with last week's personnel decision," I began, consulting my notes with the detached professionalism of someone who held Leo's career in their hands. "You terminated Jasper Edwards, your highest-performing customer service representative, and immediately replaced him with Ms. Russo. Can you walk me through the strategic rationale behind this decision?" Leo's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The confident manager who had lectured me about representing the company brand was gone, replaced by a panicking middle manager who realized he'd made a catastrophic mistake. We felt that Sophie brought innovative approaches that the department needed fresh perspectives. Leo stammered, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. "Innovative approaches," I repeated, making notes. "Can you provide specific examples of these innovations and their measurable impact on customer satisfaction metrics?" The silence stretched uncomfortably as Leo realized he had no good answers. Sophie shifted in her chair, perhaps beginning to understand that her visionary ideas weren't being received as positively as Leo had led her to believe. Actually, I continued, let me share some data with you both. Since Ms. Russo's integration began, customer satisfaction scores have dropped 18%. Response times have increased by 42%, and we've received more client complaints in 1 week than we typically see in 3 months. Leo's face went ashen. Sophie's confident facade cracked completely as the reality of her performance hit her like a freight train. Now, I said, leaning forward slightly, would you like to explain to CEO William Edwards why you prioritize personal relationships over company performance? Because that's exactly what I'll be reporting in my assessment. Leo's world was crumbling, and he knew it. The silence in Leo's office stretched for what felt like an eternity. I could see the gears turning in Leo's head as he desperately tried to calculate a way out of the corner he'd painted himself into. Sophie sat frozen in her chair, finally understanding that her brief tenure as customer experience visionary was about to come to an abrupt end. Mr. Baker, I continued, consulting my tablet with the same professional detachment I'd maintained throughout the meeting. I have a few more questions before I complete my report to CEO Edwards. Can you explain why you repeatedly excluded your highest performing team member from departmental meetings, while including employees with significantly lower productivity metrics? Leo's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. That was about team building, different perspectives. Sophie brought marketing insights, I repeated, making another note. Let's examine those insights. Ms. Russo, could you walk me through your customer engagement strategy? Specifically, I'm interested in how you plan to resolve technical database issues through meditation and positive thinking. Sophie's face flushed crimson. I was exploring holistic approaches to customer satisfaction. Sometimes, technical problems have underlying stress-related causes that traditional troubleshooting doesn't address. The absurdity of her explanation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I watched Leo's face as he realized that his girlfriend's innovative ideas sounded even more ridiculous when articulated to someone with actual business experience. I see, I said, typing notes that I knew would become part of a permanent record. And how did your clients respond to these holistic approaches? Sophie's confidence crumbled completely. Some of them seemed resistant to change. They're very focused on traditional metrics and solutions. Traditional metrics, I repeated. You mean things like actually fixing their problems and maintaining their business operations? The question landed like a physical blow. Sophie looked to Leo for support, but he was staring at his desk like it might offer him an escape route from this nightmare. Mr. Baker, I said, turning my attention back to Leo. I'm curious about the timeline of these personnel decisions. Ms. Russo was hired into your department approximately 6 months ago, correct? And your romantic relationship began shortly. After that, Leo's face went white. I don't see how my personal life is relevant to this review. It becomes relevant when personal relationships influence professional decisions that negatively impact company performance. I replied calmly. Phoenix Digital Solutions has clear policies about conflicts of interest and nepotism. I'm sure you're familiar with those policies. The trap was closing, and Leo knew it. Every question I asked revealed another layer of his unprofessional behavior. Another violation of company policy, another piece of evidence that would end his career at Phoenix. Look, Leo said, his voice taking on a desperate edge. Maybe there were some adjustment issues with the transition, but that's normal. Sophie just needs more time to implement her vision. And frankly, I don't appreciate some outside consultant coming in here and second-guessing my management decisions. It was exactly the opening I'd been waiting for. Outside consultant, I said, allowing the faintest smile to cross my face. Leo, I think it's time we cleared up a misunderstanding. I'm not an outside consultant. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a folder that contained my real Phoenix Digital Solutions employee file, the one that had been sealed for 2 years, accessible only to CEO level clearance. My name is Jasper Edwards, I said, placing the folder on Leo's desk. My father is William Edwards, founder and CEO of Phoenix Digital Solutions. For the past 2 years, I've been working in your department as part of a management training program designed to give me comprehensive understanding of our company's operations from the ground up, The color drained from Leo's face so quickly I thought he might faint. Sophie's mouth fell open as the implications hit her like a freight train. Every interaction we've had, every decision you've made, every instance of harassment and favoritism has been documented in reports that go directly to the CEO, I continued. The employee you fired last Friday wasn't some expendable customer service representative. He was the heir to this company, and you just handed him a comprehensive case study in management failure. Leo's hands were visibly shaking now. You can't be serious. This is some kind of elaborate prank. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number Leo knew by heart, the direct line to William Edwards' office.
Ed,
I said when my father answered, could you join us in the customer relations department? I think it's time for a face-to-face meeting. With Manager Baker, the 10 minutes we waited for my father to arrive were the longest of Leo's life. Sophie kept looking between us like she was watching a tennis match, her confident facade completely shattered. Leo sat behind his desk looking like a man watching his entire world collapse in real time. When William Edwards walked into the office, the family resemblance was unmistakable. Same height, same facial structure, same calm demeanor that masked razor-sharp intelligence. He nodded to me with paternal pride, then turned his attention to Leo with the cold assessment of a CEO who'd just learned that one of his managers had been systematically harassing his son. Mr. Baker, my father said, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had built a tech empire. I understand you've been providing my son with some very educational experiences over the past 2 years. Leo tried to stand, but his legs seemed to have stopped working. Mr. Edwards, I had no idea. If I had known ... If you had known what? My father interrupted. If you had known Jasper was my son, you would have treated him with basic professional respect. But it was acceptable to harass and humiliate him when you thought he was powerless. The moral weight of my father's words crushed any remaining fight in Leo. He slumped in his chair. Finally understanding that his career at Phoenix was over, security will escort you from the building within the hour, my father continued. Ms. Russo, your employment is also terminated, effective immediately. Ruby Wright will be promoted to interim department manager while we conduct a proper search for Leo's replacement. As security arrived to handle the terminations, I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and reflection. This wasn't really about revenge. It was about justice and learning. Over the following weeks, I worked with my father to implement comprehensive changes throughout Phoenix Digital Solutions. We restructured middle management, improved oversight, procedures, and created systems to ensure that workplace harassment would be quickly identified and addressed. The experience had taught me invaluable lessons about leadership, corporate culture, and the importance of protecting employees who might not have CEO fathers to advocate for them. Leo Baker's firing became a case study that was shared throughout the company, not as an example of executive vengeance, but as a demonstration of Phoenix's commitment to merit-based management and ethical leadership. Sophie found work at a social media startup where her skills were better suited to the role. Ruby thrived as department manager, implementing improvements that increased both employee satisfaction and customer service metrics. As for me, I continued working my way up through Phoenix, but now with my identity revealed and my father's full support. The 2 years I'd spent being underestimated and overlooked had given me a perspective that no MBA program could provide. I understood what it felt like to be powerless in a corporate hierarchy, and that knowledge would guide my leadership style for the rest of my career. The most important lesson I learned wasn't about management or corporate strategy. It was about the fundamental truth that how you treat people, when you think they can't affect your career, reveals who you really are as a person. Leo Baker had shown his true character when he thought he was safe from consequences, and that character had ultimately destroyed him. Sometimes the best way to learn about power is to experience powerlessness. Sometimes the most valuable education comes from being underestimated. And sometimes the people you think you can push around turn out to be the ones who determine your future. In the end, Leo Baker had been right about one thing. This really wasn't personal. It was business, the business of building a company where good people could do good work without fear of harassment or favoritism. And that was a business I was proud to inherit. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, You won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.